The forest at night has a sound all its own, a slow heartbeat of wind through trees, and the kind of silence that makes every twig snap feel personal. When you camp deep enough, you're far past the sound of highways, past the glow of cities, past anyone who could hear you scream for help. It's supposed to be peace stars above, fire crackling, the smell of pine and smoke. But for the people in these stories, the woods weren't peaceful. They were watching. Tonight, we're going into the wild places where tents don't keep you safe, where flashlights flicker for reasons you can't explain, and where something ancient still moves between the trees. These are 8 true deep woods camping horror stories that will chill your blood. Story 1. The Screams That Weren't an Animal. I've spent most of my life camping. I grew up in northern Oregon, surrounded by miles of forest trails and cold rivers that sound like static when the wind's right. I've heard coyotes, owls, foxes, even the distant roar of bears, but I've never heard anything like what screamed in the woods that night. It was late August, 2016. My friend Tyler and I took a long weekend to camp at a spot called Lake Harlow, deep in the Cascade foothills. The nearest town was 20 miles away, and after dark, it felt like the edge of the world. We'd set up camp by the lake, 2 tents, a small fire, and a cooler full of cheap beer. The night started normal crickets, wind through the trees, and the occasional splash of fish hitting the surface. Then, around 1 a.m., the forest went completely quiet. That's never a good sign. At first, I thought maybe an animal was nearby. Predators move in silence, but the longer the silence lasted, the more unnatural it felt like the forest was holding its breath. Then came the first scream. It echoed from somewhere up the ridge, long, shrill, human. Too high to be a man, too deep to be a woman. Just raw, terrified sound. Tyler froze mid-sentence, beer halfway to his mouth. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. I tried to sound calm. "Probably a cougar. They make weird noises, right?" Then it screamed again, closer. We grabbed our flashlights and scanned the tree line. Nothing but black trunks and mist rising off the lake. I could feel my heart pounding behind my ribs. The third scream came from the opposite side this time, as if it had circled us. "Okay," Tyler said, voice shaking. "That's not a cat." We killed the fire and ducked behind the truck. The air was freezing now, the kind of cold that doesn't make sense in August. Then the woods erupted. Branches snapped, footsteps heavy, fast-moving in erratic circles just outside the light's reach. Every few seconds, a new scream, each one closer, louder, angrier. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone was messing with us, another camper, drunk, trying to scare us. Except there were no other campsites for miles, and no flashlight beam, no voices, no laughter, just screams and running feet that never broke the brush line. Then it stopped. Everything. No sound, no wind, no crickets, just dead stillness. I remember whispering, "If it's a person, they need help." Tyler stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Then you go, 'I'm staying with the truck.'" So I went. I followed the sound toward the ridge, flashlight cutting through the mist, every beam catching 1,000 tiny floating particles that looked like ash. Halfway up, I found something on the ground, a torn sleeping bag, faded red, ripped clean down the middle, still warm. I called out, "Hello, are you hurt?" No answer, just a faint rustling behind me. When I turned around, my light hit something white, a face. Except it wasn't looking at me. It was facing the dirt, half buried under pine needles. A mannequin head. I kicked it by reflex, and it rolled to the side, revealing a small trail of them leading deeper into the trees. 5, 6, maybe more, each half buried, each facing the ground like they'd been placed there. And then, behind the last one, a scream erupted right next to my ear. I dropped the flashlight. Tyler said he saw the whole ridge light up from the truck like something glowing between the trees. When I came running back, I was white as a sheet, barely breathing. We threw everything into the truck and left. Didn't stop until we hit the highway. We told a ranger the next day. He took notes, asked the usual questions. When we mentioned the mannequins, his expression changed. "You said Lake Harlow," he asked. We nodded. He closed his notebook. "That area's off limits now. There's no campground there." We didn't believe him until we went back 2 weeks later in daylight this time. The road we'd taken was gone. No sign, no tire tracks, no clearing, just trees, thick and endless. But on the trunk of one pine, carved deep into the bark, was a message. It wasn't an animal. That was years ago. I still camp sometimes, but never deep in the woods, because sometimes, when the forest goes quiet, I can still hear that scream low, drawn out, almost human. And I don't think it was calling for help. I think it was warning me to leave. Story 2. The tent that kept unzipping itself. I've gone camping alone for years. I know the sounds of the woods, the way wind in pine needles can sound like whispering, and how distant coyotes can echo like laughter if you're half asleep. But nothing prepared me for the tent that wouldn't stay closed. It was early September, 2019. I'd driven out to a national forest in Montana about 40 miles from the nearest town. The weather was perfect, cold enough for a fire but not freezing, and I set up camp beside a narrow creek that shimmered silver under moonlight. I pitched my tent facing the water, tossed my gear inside, and settled in to read before sleeping. Everything was peaceful until around midnight, when I heard the first zip. It was faint, just that short, dragging sound of a zipper being pulled halfway open. I froze, listened, nothing after. Probably the fabric shifting from temperature change, I thought. I shut my lantern off and lay back. 10 minutes later, another zip, longer this time. The flap lifted just enough for a cold breeze to brush my ankle. I sat up fast, flashlight in hand. No movement outside, no footprints in the dirt. Still, I zipped it closed again and tied the pull tabs together. That should have been the end of it. At 1:27 a.m., the zipper moved again slower, steadier, like someone trying not to make noise. I could hear the individual teeth separating. "Hello," I called out. No answer, only the soft rush of the creek. When I reached for the zipper, it stopped, perfectly still. Then something pressed against the tent wall, a hand-shaped shadow, 5 long fingers spread wide. I scrambled for my knife and slashed the fabric open, but there was nothing outside, just the empty clearing and my dying fire. I didn't sleep after that. I packed a chair near the flames and sat until dawn, eyes on the tent the whole time. When morning came, I saw tracks in the dew bare feet, adult-sized, circling the campsite twice before fading into the trees. I left that day, told myself it had to be a prank or someone lost from another site. 2 weeks later, I went back. Same forest, different location about 3 miles deeper in. I wanted to prove to myself it had been nothing. Big mistake. The second night started calm. I zipped my tent closed, double-tied the tabs, even clipped a small carabiner through the loops. Then I went to sleep. At exactly 3:14 a.m., I woke up to the sound again. Zip! I reached for my flashlight, gone. The small beam from my phone barely lit the tent wall, but I could see the shape of the flap slowly rising. I shouted, "Who's there?" No voice, just breathing. Deep, slow, almost curious. And then, a whisper from outside. "It's open now." I kicked the flap wide and bolted out, phone light shaking. No one. But the entire zipper line glowed faintly, as if the metal teeth were heating from the inside. I grabbed my bag and ran toward my truck, parked 100 yards away. When I reached it, the doors were unlocked. I knew I'd locked them. Everything inside was exactly how I left it, except for one thing. The tent's zipper pull sat on the driver's seat. I didn't go back for the tent. I drove until sunrise and found a diner in the next town. The waitress asked if I'd been camping. I nodded, told her roughly where. She frowned. "They closed that section last year. Guy went missing. Park rangers found his tent all cut up, zipper teeth melted like they'd been burned." She looked down at my hands. "You didn't touch anything, did you?" I lied and said no. A few days later, I started hearing faint metallic noises at night in my apartment, soft dragging sounds like something being unzipped slowly. "It comes from the hall closet, where I keep my camping gear." I duct tape the door shut, but sometimes when I get home, the tape is peeled halfway off, and the zipper on my sleeping bag is open. If you ever camp deep in the woods, you'll notice the quiet feels different after 3 a.m. It's not silence, it's listening. And if you hear your tent start to unzip, don't move, don't breathe, don't look. Because whatever's outside already knows it can get in. Story 3. The fire that wouldn't go out. Fire is supposed to be safe in the woods. It's the one thing that keeps the dark away, the one sound that makes you feel like you're in control. But that night, the fire wasn't mine to control. It was October 21, deep in the Bitterroot Mountains. My girlfriend Emma and I had hiked 5 miles off trail to a remote clearing beside a small pond. We planned to spend 2 nights no service, no noise, no people, just stars and the crackle of a fire. The first night was perfect. We ate freeze-dried meals, shared a blanket, and listened to the woods breathe. But sometime after midnight, Emma woke me up, whispering, "The fire's still going." I blinked, half asleep. "So that's good." She shook her head. "You put it out before bed. I watched you." I sat up, and sure enough, the fire we doused hours earlier was burning bright again, flames clean and tall, not smoky or wild. I walked over, poked the ashes with a stick. They were perfectly arranged, small pyramid, kindling stacked just right. Too neat. "Must have caught a coal," I said. "Maybe wind fed it again." But there was no wind. The air was still as glass. We poured another bottle of water on it, covered it with dirt, and went back to sleep. Around 3 a.m., a soft popping sound woke me. The fire was burning again. Only this time, it wasn't where we'd left it. It was 10 feet closer to our tent. Perfect circle, no smoke. Emma sat up, pale. "Someone's doing this." I checked the woods with my flashlight. Nothing. No tracks. No movement. No sound except the faint hiss of the fire. When I looked back at it, something flickered inside the flames. A shape, human, just for a split second, then gone. We didn't sleep after that. We sat in silence, watching the fire burn until dawn. It never went out. It never spread. It just burned tall, clean, like it was breathing in rhythm with us. Oi. By morning, the clearing smelled wrong. Not smoke, more like ozone, or electricity after a storm. We left everything and hiked back to the truck. The fire was still burning when we looked back. 2 days later, rangers found our site. They called me asking if we'd left something behind. I told them about the fire. The ranger paused. "Son, there's no fire ring there. No ashes, no burned ground. Just a perfect circle of black dirt cold." I didn't know what to say. He added quietly, "You're not the first to report that." A month later, I got an email from him. No greeting, no signature, just a photo attachment. It was a shot of our campsite. Same clearing, same pond. In the center, the fire, burning bright in daylight. No one nearby, no shadows, no smoke. And at the edge of the frame, a faint silhouette, a figure standing beside the flames, facing the camera. Since that night, I haven't camped again, but I keep dreaming of it, that same fire burning, closer each time. Last week, I woke up to a faint glow outside my bedroom window. I live in the suburbs, no woods, no campfire. When I looked out, there was a single flame burning on my lawn. Perfect circle, no smoke. I poured water on it. It hissed, died, then reignited. I called the fire department. When they arrived, the flame was gone, but the ground was warm to the touch. They asked if anyone had been burning leaves. I told them no. As they left, one of the firefighters turned back and said, "Strange thing, this isn't char. It's fused glass, like it burned hotter than anything we use." That night, I dreamed of the clearing again. The fire was right outside my tent, casting light through the fabric, shadows moving inside it like silhouettes dancing. A voice whispered through the crackling sound, the same tone as fire hissing against wood. "It's your turn to keep it alive." I woke up drenched in sweat, room glowing faint orange. The fire alarm wasn't going off, but my camping backpack, sitting by the wall, was warm. When I unzipped it, there was ash inside, and buried beneath it, a single unburned match. Story 4. The Ranger Who Knocked Twice. Camping alone is one thing, but being checked on in the middle of nowhere by someone who's supposed to make you feel safe, that's what really scared me. It was summer 2020, a few months into the pandemic, when everything felt empty. Parks were closed, trails unmarked, and the only place I could breathe was deep in the woods. So I packed light, just a one-person tent, some food, and a small .22 for bears, and drove north until my phone lost signal. I parked near a gravel service road, crossed a creek, and hiked until I couldn't hear the world anymore. It was perfect quiet, untouched, like the forest had been waiting for someone to notice it again. The first night was calm, the kind of calm that feels holy. Then, just before dawn, someone knocked on my tent. Not a tap, a knock. 2 slow, deliberate hits against the nylon. Thump. Thump. I froze. The sound came from the side facing the trees. I unzipped the flap, expecting maybe a bear brushing past, but there was a man standing there. Khaki uniform, ranger patch, hat low over his eyes. He smiled slightly and said, "Morning, sir. You're in a restricted area." His voice was calm, too calm, like he'd rehearsed it. I stammered, I didn't see any signs." He nodded once. "They were taken down." Then he looked over my shoulder into the tent and added, "You should pack up before dark. It's not safe to stay overnight." I asked why. He didn't answer. He just turned and started walking toward the ridge, boots crunching leaves. I watched until he vanished between the trees. Something about his uniform looked wrong. It was clean, perfect. No dirt, no sweat, no radio, no badge number. When I checked my watch, it was 5:12 a.m. Too early for patrol, too early for anyone to hike this far. That afternoon, I hiked the direction he'd gone, half to prove to myself he was real. The forest grew thicker, quieter, like it was swallowing sound. After half a mile, I found a small clearing. In the center stood an old park sign, rotted and covered in moss. It read, "Campground closed. Fatal accident. 1997. Behind it, half buried in vines, was a wooden post with a single name carved into it, Ranger D. Keller. When I got back to camp, the air felt wrong. No birds, no wind, just that heavy silence that makes you hear your heartbeat. Then, right at dusk, 2 knocks on the tent wall. Thump, thump, same rhythm, same spot. I grabbed the .22 and whispered, "Who is it?" No reply. I unzipped the flap, nothing, but just beyond the tree line, a figure stood half in shadow. Same hat, same posture. He raised a hand, pointed to the ground beside him, and disappeared into the dark. I didn't sleep. I sat awake until sunrise, waiting for something else to happen. When I stepped out, I found footprints, boot prints, deep and sharp, leading from the trees to my tent. The weird thing was the spacing. They were too far apart, like someone had taken 6-foot strides. And the dirt around them wasn't disturbed, no drag, no shift, as if the prints had been pressed into the ground all at once. I packed immediately and started hiking back. Every so often, I'd hear twigs crack behind me. When I turned around, nothing but empty woods. By midday, I reached the service road and stopped dead. My truck was gone. Only the tire tracks remained, fading into the trees like they'd been driven upward into the forest. That's when I heard it again. 2 knocks, on metal this time. Thump, thump. I turned. The ranger was standing 20 feet away, smiling the same calm smile. "You didn't leave before dark," he said softly. "It's dark now." I looked around, but the sunlight had dimmed, like dusk had dropped out of nowhere. He walked toward me, boots silent against the gravel. As he passed, I saw the tag on his chest, a rusted nameplate barely hanging on. It read Keller, the same name from the sign. I ran, I don't know how long or where, just through trees, until I found a fire road and followed it downhill. By the time I hit the main highway, it was pitch black. A passing truck driver picked me up. He said he'd been coming that route for 20 years and hadn't seen a ranger out there since the late 90s. When I told him the name, he gripped the wheel tighter. "You sure it was Keller?" "Yeah. Then you met a ghost. Kid. He died in a landslide back in '97 trying to warn campers to get out before dark." That night, at home, I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt like a knock. At 3 a.m., someone tapped twice on my apartment door. Thump. Thump. I looked through the peephole. Empty hallway. But taped to the floor was a park citation, my name printed at the top. Below it, handwritten, "Failure to vacate before dark." I moved apartments after that, but sometimes, when I camp with friends and the woods go silent, I hear those 2 slow knocks again. And if I ever ignore them, the darkness around the fire feels thicker, like something standing just beyond the light, waiting for me to listen. Story 5. The cabin with the lights still on. Everyone dreams of finding a hidden cabin when they're lost in the woods. It's supposed to mean safety, a roof, a fire, a door to shut out whatever's behind you. But sometimes, that door isn't keeping the outside out. It's keeping the inside in. In 2017, my cousin Josh and I hiked through a stretch of national forest in northern Idaho. We were heading to a lake marked on an old map he'd found in his granddad's shed, the kind of place that doesn't show up on GPS. No cell service, no marked trail, just a dotted line fading into trees. By sunset, fog rolled down the slopes like it had weight. We realized we'd overshot the trail hours ago. The temperature dropped fast, and the woods took on that hollow sound, like distance itself was closing in. That's when we saw it, a faint light ahead, yellow, steady, unmoving. Josh grinned. "Cabin, told you this map was good luck." I wanted to believe him. The cabin sat in a small clearing, wood dark with age but still solid. Light leaked through the window curtains, and smoke curled lazily from a chimney. We knocked nothing. Knocked again, silence. Josh called out, "Hello, we're lost hikers. Anyone home?" No answer, but the door creaked open an inch, as if nudged from the inside. The warmth that spilled out was almost unreal. After hours of freezing fog, it felt like stepping into a memory. Inside was neat, too neat. A table set for two, fire burning in the hearth, blankets folded by the bed. Everything looked ready for guests. "Someone must live here," Josh said. "Maybe they stepped out to cut wood." We waited. An hour passed. The fire didn't burn down, not even a little. I touched one of the logs. Cool. No heat. No smoke. Just light. My stomach sank. "Josh," I whispered, "it's not fire." He frowned, leaned close, and said, "Then what is it?" The answer came from behind us, a whisper, low and slow. "Welcome home." We spun around. No one. But the front door had closed by itself. The latch clicked. The air changed heavy, humid, like a breath trapped too long. Every sound of the forest vanished. Josh grabbed the handle stuck. He shoved his shoulder against it, but it wouldn't move. Then the lamps on the wall brightened, not like bulbs, more like the walls themselves were glowing. And in that light, shapes began to appear, faint outlines of people sitting at the table, hands folded, faces blurred as if underwater. One of them turned its head toward me. The motion was jerky, like it had forgotten how to move. "You made it before dark," it said in a voice that didn't sound like sound at all, more like memory, echoing straight into my skull. Josh fired the flashlight beam at it. The shape vanished. So did the others. We didn't talk. We just started looking for another way out. There was a back door, locked. A window, nailed shut. Then Josh noticed something carved into the wood beside the doorframe, a list of names, each followed by a date. The last one read J. Keller, 1997. That name, I'd heard it before. "Wasn't that the ranger from that story?" Josh asked. I nodded slowly. The air around us buzzed. The firelight flickered to white for a moment, then went dark. Total blackness. In that dark, a sound filled the cabin, slow footsteps moving upstairs, boards creaking one at a time. There was no staircase. The glow returned faint, pulsing like a heartbeat. In the center of the floor, where the fire pit had been, a door now gaped open, leading down into the earth. "Basement," Josh muttered. "No," I said. "Cabins this old don't have basements." Something scraped below, metal dragging across stone. Then a voice rose up, the same whisper from before, closer this time. "Stay for the night. There's always room." Josh bolted for the front door again. It swung open easily this time, too easily. He ran into the clearing. I followed, but the moment I stepped outside, the air flipped cold again, and the cabin behind us went dark. No light, no smoke, no sound. Just an empty shell under the fog. We didn't stop running until the trees broke and we hit the road. By the time we flagged down a car, the fog had vanished completely. 3 days later, we returned with a ranger to find the cabin again. We showed him the map, the coordinates, everything. He looked confused. "There's no structure out there," he said. "That land's been empty since a fire in the 90s. Burned an entire ranger outpost down, killed everyone inside." He paused, then added almost to himself, "Ranger Keller was one of them. Josh doesn't talk about it anymore. He threw away his gear, sold his truck, moved to Arizona somewhere flat, dry, no trees, no fog. But I can't stop thinking about that cabin, about how it felt warm even though nothing was burning. Last month, I found something strange in my garage. An old map tucked under my toolbox, creased, yellow, hand-drawn. My name written on the corner in ink I didn't recognize. And right above it, a note in neat handwriting. If you ever get lost again, the lights will be on. Story 6. The whistling that followed us home. Some sounds stick with you forever. A scream, a crash, a voice in the dark. But for me, it was a whistle, 3 notes that still find me in my dreams. It started 2 summers ago. My brother Evan and I went camping near a stretch of wilderness called Black Hollow Ridge. Locals avoided it, saying the trails there never led back the same way. We laughed it off. The first day was perfect blue sky, mountain air, the kind of quiet that makes you feel clean inside. We set up camp beside a stream and spent the evening fishing, just brothers catching up after years apart. But that night, something strange drifted through the woods, a faint whistling sound. 3 notes, low, high, low, over and over. At first, we thought it was wind through the rocks, but the pattern was too perfect, too intentional. Evan joked, "Maybe it's some hermit calling his dog." But we didn't laugh. Around midnight, it got louder. Always 3 notes, never changing, never offbeat. Then, for the first time, it stopped. And something answered. A second whistle, this one farther away, echoing the same pattern. Then silence, until both started again, trading tones like 2 people calling to each other in code. The forest felt smaller suddenly, like the trees were closing in. Evan whispered, "Let's go inside the tent." We zipped it shut, but the whistling didn't fade. It circled, left side, then behind us, then right next to the tent wall. That's when the zipper moved. Not up or down sideways, like fingers pressing from the outside. Evan grabbed the flashlight and shined it through the fabric. For half a second, we saw a silhouette, tall, thin, bent backward at the waist, head tilted at an impossible angle. Then the light died. The whistling stopped. We didn't move for the rest of the night. By morning, everything seemed normal. Sunlight, birds, nothing out of place, except for footprints around our tent, bare, long, narrow prints that sank deep into the soil, too deep for any normal person. We decided to hike out early. No breakfast, no packing neatly. We just left. After about 2 miles, we started hearing it again, the same 3 notes, so faint it could have been wind. But the sound wasn't behind us anymore. It was ahead. We pushed through the trees, expecting to find another campsite or maybe a hiker. Instead, we found a clearing. In the center was a wooden cross, old and leaning, surrounded by stones stacked in neat little piles. Carved into the cross were 3 lines like a music staff with notes scratched deep into the wood. 3 notes. Low, high, low. Evan crouched to look closer. "You think it's some kind of memorial?" I didn't answer, because from the tree line behind him, something whistled those same 3 notes again, slow and deliberate. We ran. Branches tore at our arms, roots tripped our boots, but we didn't stop until we hit the gravel road where we'd parked. When we finally reached the truck, Evan fumbled with the keys, hands shaking so bad he dropped them twice. As soon as the engine started, we took off. The woods disappeared in the rear view, but halfway down the mountain road, we heard it again. This time, from the back seat. 3 notes, low, high, low. Evan slammed the brakes. We both turned. No one there. We made it home 6 hours later, drove straight through without stopping, tried to laugh it off, convince ourselves we'd been exhausted, hearing wind or birds or God knows what. But that night, as I was brushing my teeth, I heard it again, soft, distant, coming from outside the bathroom window. 3 notes. Low, high, low. Over the next few days, it kept happening. Never at the same time, never from the same direction. Sometimes from the yard, sometimes from the hallway. Once, from the vent above my bed. Evan called me on the 5th night. He sounded tired. You're hearing it too, right? Yeah, it won't stop. I tried sleeping with earplugs, it just gets louder, like it's inside my head. Then I heard it through the phone. 3 notes, from his end. He went quiet, then whispered, "It's right outside my window." The call cut out. I drove to his house 30 minutes later, front door unlocked, lights on, no sign of struggle, just open windows and curtains blowing in the wind. On the floor of his bedroom was a piece of wood about the size of a music sheet, with 3 carved lines. Next to it, footprints, bare, long, and deep. The police found no sign of him, no forced entry, no tracks leading away. They ruled it missing person, likely voluntary. But I know what I heard. A week later, I started noticing other things. Birds in my yard would stop mid-song. Dogs wouldn't bark. Even the wind seemed to die before that sound began. 3 notes, always the same. One night, I recorded it on my phone. When I played it back, there were 2 whistles mine, faint in the background, and another overlapping it, just half a second delayed. Almost like an echo. Except it kept going after I stopped recording. Last month, a package arrived on my doorstep. No return address, no postage. Inside was a cassette tape. The label said only, "Play me." I hesitated for hours before putting it in an old player. At first, just static, then my brother's voice. "I found where it comes from," he whispered. "It's not in the woods anymore." 3 notes whistled softly. Then his breathing quickened. "It's in the walls." The tape ended with the sound of something scraping, followed by those same 3 notes, drawn out longer this time, like someone trying to remember how to be human. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, the whistling hasn't stopped. It follows me to work, to the store, to sleep. Yesterday morning, I woke to find dirt on my bedroom floor, bare footprints, leading from the window to the door. And on the mirror, written in fog, "Low, high, low." If you ever go camping in Black Hollow Ridge and you hear 3 notes drifting through the trees, don't answer. Don't whistle back. Don't even listen. Because the moment you recognize the tune, it recognizes you, and it never forgets your name. Story 7. The Last Camper Left in the Park. Some stories don't start with fear, they start with loneliness. That's what this one is. Loneliness. And the sound of a radio that wouldn't stop playing after everyone was gone. In 2022, I worked as a seasonal park ranger in northern Maine. The job was simple: watch over campgrounds after hours, check for fires, make sure no one overstayed their permits. Most nights were quiet, too quiet. By late September, The season was ending. Most campers had packed up, leaving behind cold fire pits and empty coolers. The air smelled like pine and rain. My last assignment was to sweep through a site called Whispering Pines Campground, a place that should have been empty. But when I checked the roster, one name was still listed M. Hale, permit expiring September 30th. The date was October 2nd. I drove out around dusk. The gravel road stretched 5 miles into the forest before turning to dirt. Fog hung low, curling between the trees like smoke. When I reached the site, the first thing I saw was light, a small campfire still burning, and beside it, a single tent. Someone was definitely still there. Park Service, I called. Anyone here? No answer, just the crackle of the fire and the low hum of a radio playing something faint, a man's voice talking, maybe an old news segment. I got closer. The radio wasn't playing music. It was static with words whispering under it. Something like, "Still here, just one left." The tent flap was open. Inside was a sleeping bag, a lantern, and a half-eaten can of beans. Still warm. But no sign of the camper. Then I saw something hanging from a branch nearby, a laminated permit card, clipped with a piece of wire. Name a Hale check-in August 12th, checkout. The checkout line was blank. I radioed the ranger station, told dispatch I'd found an abandoned camp, but the line crackled, and instead of the dispatcher's voice, I heard breathing, slow, rhythmic. Then the same words I'd heard from the radio earlier. Just one left. I dropped the mic and backed toward the truck. That's when I saw movement by the fire, a figure, crouched low, face hidden by long gray hair, rocking slowly back and forth. "Sir, you need to clear this area," I said. The figure stopped rocking, then turned its head slightly. "You're early," it whispered. I froze. What? It looked up. The face was wrong. Not deformed, just empty. No eyes, no mouth, no features. A face with nothing behind it. The air went cold so fast my breath turned white. I reached for my flashlight, and when I looked back, the figure was gone. Only the fire remained burning steady, flames whispering against the wind. I packed the gear and doused the fire, but even as I poured water over it, the flames hissed and flared brighter, like the water was feeding them instead of killing them. That's when I saw it, words burned into the log itself, glowing faint orange. "Leave before count is 0. Then the fire went out on its own. I didn't wait. I jumped in the truck and drove back toward the gate. Halfway down the road, my radio came to life again, clearer this time. "Ranger Post 9, come in. We still show one camper registered in Whispering Pines." "I know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Site's empty." A pause. Then, "No, it's not. You're the last one on the list." The line went dead. When I reached the park gate, it was closed, locked, even though I'd left it open. I stepped out of the truck, tried the latch, frozen solid. That's when I heard the voice again, not from the radio but from the woods behind me. "Counts at 1. Branches shifted. Something was moving between the trees fast, circling. I turned on my flashlight. For a moment, I saw faces in the fog half-formed, blurry, like they were being remembered by the forest itself, then gone. I got back in the truck, slammed it into gear, and gunned it down the road. No matter how far I drove, the gate never got closer. The headlights showed the same stretch of trees, the same sign, the same locked chain. That's when I realized what the voice meant. Count. It was counting campers, and when it said 1, it wasn't warning me. It was announcing me. The last one left. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember waking up at dawn, still behind the wheel, radio humming softly. The gate was open. The fire in the distance was out. Everything was still. I drove straight to headquarters, filed my report, and handed over the permit card. The ranger on duty stared at it for a long time. "This can't be," he said. "Hale was a ranger, died in '02 on that same site. I quit the job that week, but I still dream of that night sometimes. In the dream, I'm standing by the fire, watching the smoke rise straight into the sky. Then a voice behind me whispers, 'Count's not zero yet.' When I turn around, there's a figure crouched in the same spot where I'd found the camper, rocking slowly by the flames, wearing my uniform, my badge, my face. People ask if I still go camping. I tell them no, but sometimes, when I drive past the park entrance, I see a faint orange light glowing between the trees, and my truck radio crackles with static. 3 words always follow. Counts at 1, and I can never tell if it's a warning or a reminder. The woods are supposed to be quiet. That's what makes them beautiful, the stillness, the isolation, the sense that you've stepped outside the world. But quiet doesn't always mean safe. Sometimes it means something is listening. Every camper in these stories thought they were alone. They packed their tents, built their fires, trusted the sound of the wind and the rhythm of crickets. But when the forest goes completely silent, that's when it notices you. Because the woods don't just remember the people who visit, they keep them. Every scream, every breath, every footstep that disappears beneath the pine needles, it all becomes part of the forest's memory. And maybe that's why no map ever feels right for long. Why roads vanish. Why trails change. Because the forest grows around the ones who never made it back out. If you ever camp deep enough to lose the sound of highways, if your fire burns too long, or you hear something whisper your name from beyond the tree line, don't answer. Don't follow the light. Don't whistle back. Pack your things. Leave your tent. And don't look behind you, no matter what you hear. Because the forest doesn't want you to leave. It only wants to know you stayed long enough to be remembered. Thank you for listening to these 8 true deep woods camping horror stories. If you've ever felt that sudden cold when the fire burns low, you know the feeling they felt. And if you ever go back out there, remember one thing. Silence means you're not alone.